Hi Oscar, let's take a look at your new tasks today. The line graph shows the distribution of rainfall expressed in milliliters from January to December of 2018 in three different countries, Scotland, Wales, and England. Overall, throughout the year, the amount of rain fluctuated, past tense, in the three countries. While Scotland and Wales suffered the most drastic rainfall fluctuations, England had the highest number of rainy months with rainfall above 100 ml. Lovely, very good. In England, the absolute precipitation numbers oscillated between approximately 70 and 130 ml, while in Scotland and Wales, rainfall here ranged. You could have said while Scotland. If you hadn't written that in, you could have just said while Scotland and Wales ranged from. But since you have that in, you have to say while in Scotland and Scotland and Wales, rainfall ranged from roughly 25. Okay. Though England had 7 months of rainfall above 100 ml, they lasted around 1 month in April, July, and September, and 2 months in January and February and November. That's a little detailed. Okay, but fine. The lowest precipitation value in England was around 75 ml in between May and June. 75 ml, England here. Okay, fine. The driest months were present in Wales. In April, Wales reached the lowest rainfall overall with around 25 ml, while in August to October precipitation plateaued at just below 50. Although Wales and Scotland reached peak rainfall levels similar to those in England, the number of months with rainfall values above 100 ml were 3 and 5 respectively. Okay, so as you can see, I got through this very easily. It was really well written in terms of your grammar and your vocabulary. Your paragraphing is nice. However, I do have some concerns about the way you've decided to develop your data. You had this super detailed paragraph about England. I loved this sentence here. I thought that was a very good way to do this. You did say something about the range here, but the rest of the paragraph was fairly detailed about England's rainfall. In contrast, you had a really tiny paragraph to cover Wales and Scotland. I really think you should have said more. So, do I know the peaks? Yeah, I know that they had some peaks, Wales and Scotland both, of around 150. I also know that the lowest rainfall happened in Wales in April. Okay. I also know that there was a plateau in Wales. But what I'm missing here is a couple of key pieces of information. First of all, I have very little detail about Scotland. Let's see. Even this 3 and 5 doesn't really help me too much. I'm assuming you mean the 3 applies to Wales and the 5 applies to Scotland. Anyway, what I was saying was that I have really very little information about Scotland. Here, let me tell you what, for me, some of the really important information here is. You've got this year, right? So what is a year? It's kind of like a story. So when you want to hear a story, there are certain points you want to know about. Personally, I always want to know the beginning of the story. Okay? And I most certainly want to know how the story ends. And then the other things that I want to know are some of those key pieces of information throughout the story. So as far as England is concerned, I like what you did. I thought that was a smart way to do it. I think it would have been a good idea to also mention that I think you did it actually, but I'm not entirely sure. You could have just mentioned those 3 peaks, all right? You did mention that low point, which was great, okay? But again, the beginning, the end, those 2 additional peaks at the end, and those 2 additional peaks, and then that low. Okay, I like what you said that it oscillated between this and this. That was a very good way of doing this. Now, as for the other 2 countries, their trajectory is much crazier. It's very varied. So you could have broken down the year in a couple of different ways. So one thing you could have done, talking about Scotland, again, beginning of the year, then you could talk about this craziness here for that first half of the year, okay, with these enormous fluctuations. And then you could say that things sort of stabilized a little more, resembling England's pattern far more closely, okay. However, it had this major third drop here and then ended here, okay. As for Wales, it had some of the lowest rainfall in the first quarter, in the first third of the year. Okay, it went here and then it went all the way down here. But then it had two of its biggest peaks in the middle of the year, this in May and this in July, followed by a period of lows in the summer, in the late summer, early fall, and in December ended here. Okay, so that's one way you could do it. This is some of the information that I think is the most important, and it's really just looking at this in a way like, okay, how can I separate this into meaningful chunks and things that I can group together where I'm giving information, but I'm not overwhelming the reader with information, but I'm not also skimping on information. It's this very difficult balance to find. I'm confident, though, that you can accomplish it. Let's take a look at your task 2. Marriage and birth in your 30s. Okay, which is better? Let's see. It doesn't say really which is better. It just says this is a positive or negative trend. Let's see what you said about it. Experts throughout the developed and developing world have debated whether getting married or giving birth when people are in their 30s is more beneficial than doing it at a younger age. Though 5 decades ago it was common and expected to start a family at 20 to 29 years old, this expectation has shifted. Empirical evidence supports that waiting until people reach their 30s is the best moment to start a family, which aligns with my personal opinion. Oh, that's nice. I like that, which aligns with my personal opinion. This essay will just explain the positive outcomes it holds and why it is, careful here, why it is. This is an indirect question. So why it is that nowadays the standard of practice in our society, why it is the okay. And why it is the standard of practice in our society by using examples from Harvard University and the government of Peru. Did I say Purdue? Sorry, Peru. Lovely. I really like this. It's a little long, okay, but it's lovely, really. Okay. Ample evidence states that the right moment to start a family is around 30 to 39 years old. And the reason behind this is that people in their 30s reach financial stability and maturity compared to their younger peers. Both characteristics enable couples to responsibly assume their role as either parents, husbands, or wives. That was a good way of doing it. Good. For instance, Harvard University has recently published its findings in which American couples that either got married or had a child at around 33 years old were happier than those who did so when they were in their 20s. This happiness was independently associated with the fact that families saved enough money to spend on things they considered important, such as traveling, and it was also related with how well their children thrived cognitively and emotionally. The author stated that had these families done this in their 20s, the results would have been negative. Therefore, waiting to be mature enough and for economic stability is just the right thing to do. Not the most academic expression I've ever heard. Okay, is just the right thing to do. I think you could have made it a little more academic sounding. Let me see if I can come up with something. Therefore, waiting to be mature enough and for economic stability is a prudent step to take, for example. Okay? Secondly, beyond doubt, waiting to reach at least 30 years of age is ideal and something people should aim for. The rationale behind this is straightforward. It is practical. In detail, the new generation of young adults highly values because it's the new generation. Values personal accomplishment. Hence, they would rather wait until they finish their academic pathway, obtain their university degrees, and start their first job to start a family. For example, according to the government of Peru, Peruvian doctors take around 15 years of work in the specialty they so desire. This means that they start finding personal accomplishment and financial stability at 30 years old. Thus, as it was said before, waiting for personal accomplishments is not only practical, but it is becoming the norm. Okay. I would have liked something a little more about maybe marriage and childbirth here. Okay, maybe just a little more. I understand what you're trying to say, but still tie it back to, because somebody could potentially say to you, okay, well, great, you're a doctor. What, you can't get married and, do all this stuff? So show me why you can't do this, why you can't get married while you're becoming a doctor in Peru. All right, I'm just playing devil's advocate. So you should tie it back to marriage and childbirth. All right, so to conclude, I firmly believe the third decade of life, careful with this. Guess what? The third decade of life, if you really think about it, is your 20s. Your first decade is when you're a child from 0 to 10. Well, 11 actually. The second decade is until like 21, and then the third decade is until 31. So you're actually talking about the fourth decade of your life. So careful, careful, careful. So to conclude, I firmly believe that the fourth decade of life is the right age to start a family because of the practicality and financial and emotional stability adults have. In fact, it is expected in the future this practice will be the norm worldwide. Okay. It's beautiful. It's lovely. I mean, I really enjoyed reading it. I thought your grammar and your vocabulary were fantastic. Well controlled, as I already said. It was beautifully written. It was certainly very developed. Okay. There's not a lot else I want to say about this. Even the question is really interesting. You've got two questions, but essentially they're just a rephrasing of each other. Is it a positive or negative development? Do you support this development? So the answer is obviously for you, it's a positive development. Yes, I support it. And that's the way you developed your essay. So that's fine. Okay, Oscar, go ahead and correct these essays based on my suggestions. Return them to us corrected. Add to your error correction list. And let's see your next set of essays. You're doing really well. Okay, so congratulations. Good luck. Keep up the good work.